What's up, Andrew? How you doing, man?
What's happening, dude? Appreciate the intro, dude. That intro with the metal and the hurdles, like that's rowdy. That rules.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 2 of the Third and Dynasty podcast. I am your host, Dynasty Dustin, Double D, if you will, and it is an honor and pleasure to introduce our guest today, 2024 FSWA Writer of the Year, Fantasy Alarms Andrew Cooper. So, there's one question I ask everybody when we get started here. Um, if you could pick one moment and look back at it and say that's why you fell in love with fantasy football or football in general, what would it be?
It's so funny. I mean, falling in love with football was way back when I was a kid. Like it's just my dad played. That's all we did, right? But for fantasy football, it was tight end for me as well. It was the year that Marquise Colston was a rookie, right? And it was 2006, so I was actually in high school still, and I grabbed him because I noticed that Yahoo had tight end eligibility for him. I guess when he went through the combine, the pro days, some teams were asking if he would play tight end for them if they converted him, and Yahoo picked up on that and changed it. And I absolutely steamrolled my league that year. And people were like, "Oh, that's not fair," blah blah blah. I even actually, I think, hold on, I still have the Marquise Colston jersey I bought with the money I won that year. So that's just one of those moments for me where I was like, man, this rocks, dude. And then later on in my career, there were different, there were moments where I was like, you know what, I could actually do this for work. And it's funny that you bring up my article inspiring you because I know you're with Player Profiler. And I've told Matt Kelly this that his show with Nate Liss, what like the Sonic Truth, that was the first time because I had listened to like, sports talk and sports radio and I'd listened to sports podcasts. That was the first time that I heard a show and I realized like this doesn't have to be boring. This can be fun. Like this, you can be mean. I don't like being mean, but you can say crazy things, right? Like you can be yourself because the shows at the time were all like, you know, four guys on a show and they go, oh, hey, do you like Clinton Portis? Yes, no, yes, no. Like that's the show. But these guys were just like in your face, and they were bringing a different level. And that was when I said to myself, like, wait a second, maybe I can do this because I'm never going to be that other guy, but I could like what these guys are doing. I love that. So it's crazy how it all comes full circle, man. With the tight ends, with player profiler, with you, and here we are. Look at us now.
Absolutely. I can remember vividly. I graduated in 2007, so for how long you would have to call in on the radio at 11 o'clock at night and wait to ask Dave Richard a question.
Yes. Yep.
And one time in my life, I got to ask him a question, and it was about Robbie Anderson. And then he destroyed my fantasy. But I was one of
uh,
the proudest moments, and
it's
that
cra-
was
and and it's crazy to think Dave Richard, just got inducted into the FSWA Hall of Fame, but he was also up for Writer of the Year. Like those guys, a lot of those guys are still out there crushing it, still putting out great content, man. It's a fun industry. And it's like the guys you look up to, you get to hang out with, That's why the going to the
absolutely.
Fantasy Football Expo, that would be my biggest recommendation for anybody not just wanting to get in the industry, but that loves this industry is that even the people you argue with on Twitter, when you get together, you realize that you have more in common that you do differences. And, you know, the expo is a big part of that. Just being able to say, you know what, like, hey, we might argue on Twitter or on Reddit or whatever, but when we're all together, we're just here hanging out talking ball.
Uh, I'd say if I had to pick like what this podcast is, it'd be somewhere between the couch with Sigmund Bloom and School of Scott with Scott and Theo.
That
I really want to jump in the Wayback Machine here and talk to the people about 12 formation because as the middle of the field opens up, we need to find more edges in fantasy football. So, Andrew, why don't you tell the people, because I can't think of another person more qualified to talk about tight ends in 12 formation. What the heck is 12 formation, anyways?
Yeah. And to your point on cover two, right? Like back in the day, you had it was kind of just like cover two or cover three. And the basics, the reason people went away from cover two for a long time is that you could really just beat it with three verticals, right? Two safeties deep, like at the high school level or whatever, you just run like if somebody comes out with three wide, we would check out a cover two into cover three because we knew that our guys couldn't handle it. Where we are now in the NFL is that guys like Vic Fangio and Spagnuolo and these guys, like especially Fangio, they've figured out how to use cover two to disguise every type of coverage they do. So they're not really even running just too high cover two. They're running cover four. Like they call it mofo, right? Middle of the field open, and it's like four guys that can all drop back, or they can go into cover six where it's quarters on one side and half on the other. It's like or cover eight, which is the flip. Like they're so good at disguising the coverages. And then they have these like underneath that, they had like the match play and palms. For people not familiar with that, it's basically an if then that system of like if this guy releases vertical, we switch. If this guy goes on the outside, then we don't switch. You know what I mean? It's like it's gotten as complex as offense, and it's kind of forced the offense to to almost simplify things, right? Because before it's like, okay, we'll run all these long complex routes, but now that they have these way of jumping routes, it kind of simplifies things. And you'll see with certain quarterbacks that don't hold on to the ball, it's led to more passes over the middle. Now, your question was on 12 formation, and as people should know, the system of counting is the first number is the number of running backs, second number is the number of tight ends. So 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end, the rest wide receivers, three.
Real
12
quick.
personnel, one running back, two tight ends. And then you have 21 running back and a fullback or two running backs, right? Those are the main ones. But the reason that people are going to more 12 personnel is that teams are going out and they're putting a ton of these you know, the base formation now is nickel coverage to have three cornerbacks and two safeties. And teams are basically saying, hey, if you're going to do that, then we're going to load up on the big guys and we're going to run you guys over. The 49ers do it. The 49ers go out there and play two tight ends with Eric Saubert and George Kittle, and they'll put Kyle Juszczyk out there. And Kyle Juszczyk played 191 snaps of inline tight end himself. So they'll just go out there and run you over and basically make you try and if you're just going to sit there in a shell, they just run you over. That team went to the Super Bowl in 2023, Dustin, attempting the third fewest passes of any team. And the Eagles last year just went to the Super Bowl attempting the fewest passes of any team, just because they're basically saying, hey, if you're going to sit back, we're going to run you over. So I think that's you're right. It's going back to old school football to some degree by just running people over up the middle.
Absolutely. And I may be mistaken, but like a simple visual view for the cover two, the old school Seahawks defense, right? Where you had Cam Chancellor, you had um, your corners were all big, like 6'1", 6'2". So
Right,
just
right.
this positional
Okay,
versatility on
Brandon Browner and Richard Sherman. Like Brandon Browner was huge. He would
yeah,
just grab you.
Richard Sherman, exactly. And then, you had your Rome linebacker kind of trying to police the middle there. But just for like a little visual there, that's kind of what we're talking about. And yeah, like getting into the 12 formation, I mean, you brought it up. San Francisco 49ers, 49.8% in 21 personnel alone, let alone 12.
That's
Ball,
that's use check, man. Like so, you Kyle use check. People don't realize that guy plays like 40% of the snaps, and sometimes even more in a lot of those games. And then you got Eric Saubert playing a ton too. That's why. When was the last time the 49ers had a wide receiver three that was relevant when the top two wide receivers were healthy? Right. Never happens because the fullback and tight ends play so much. Same with the Dolphins with Alec Ingold and all the tight ends playing so much. You don't have to think about the wide receiver three because they don't play a ton of snaps. It really for tight end helps consolidate the targets among the top two guys. That's how you get George Kittle and Johnny Smith, despite them having multiple good wide receivers.
Absolutely. I mean, just the rundown here, if you take a look at it, Las Vegas Raiders,
Mhm.
35.5%, 12 formation. San Francisco, like I said, 34.8. Kansas City, 33.9. Detroit, 32.2. Baltimore, 31. Eagles, 29.4. Cardinals, 29.2. Vikings, 24.7. That's the list of the best tight ends in fantasy football.
Right. Not yet. It literally is. It's Bowers, Kittle, Kelsey, Laporta, Mark Andrews, Dallas Goddard, Trey McBride, TJ Hawkins. And also, honestly, besides the Raiders and I guess the Cardinals, those are also arguably some of the best organizations in football. Like the 49ers had a down year, but the Chiefs and the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. The Lions and the Ravens were the teams of destiny until they lost. And you know what? The Cardinals and Vikings can do damage too. So it's not crazy. And when you look at the teams that win Super Bowls, Dustin, I mean, go back through time. Travis Kelsey, Dallas Goddard, Rob Gronkowski, right? Like it's an important part of ball, man, having that two-way tight end.
It's like the 2014 49ers Kaepernick offense basically just duped all over the league, it seems like.
Right.
So, why don't you tell the people, Andrew, what's the advantage of 12 personnel and how can we use that to find an edge in our leagues this season?
Yeah. So in my original article, the one you referenced, right? The what makes an elite tight end. I'm always tweaking that, right? Um, and we'll get into those after this. But one of the most recent tweaks is consolidation. And I got into it a little bit just now, but the short and sweet is you want as many guys on the field for as many snaps as possible that aren't soaking up targets, right? So let's take that 2023 San Francisco 49ers offense, right? The one that went to the Super Bowl. And that was a bottom three team in pass attempts, right? 30 a game, I believe it was. That team, if you look at it, want your tight end to be the focal point of the offense. But the consolation, the next best we can get is to have a bunch of guys out there that are just not touching the ball. And whether that's a fullback, whether that's a blocking tight end, whether that's a wide receiver that we call the sacrificial X, right? A guy that just blocks, whether it's a field stretcher, where right these guys like are kind of boom bust, but they're not going to get 110 targets. They're going to get like 60, 70. The more of those guys on the field, the easier it is for our guys to thrive. And the biggest enemy of the tight end is the wide receiver.
Whew. I mean, you broke it down there.
Getting down with it.
When deploying this 12 personnel, not only are they using it as an offensive scheme to get their players open, but something I noticed on film, Sauce Gardner, for example, when his play started to decline, what the coordinators were doing were they were smashing him with tight ends. We threw at the Pittsburgh Steelers, we took Darnell Washington and hit him 4, 5, 6 times in the first quarter, and then he couldn't cover anybody the rest of the game. And that effect is going to continue to happen until these defenses can draft and develop larger players to properly deploy the scheme on defense that you were talking about earlier. So
Yeah.
that's really where this advantage is going to start to happen over the middle. The offenses are currently a little bit ahead, and we have a class coming in that's basically designed to take advantage of this.
Right.
Uh,
You look at, to your point there, you look at the 49ers, watch the film on them. They have Trent Williams going in motion sometimes. They have him going out and lead blocking like a fullback would, and they run the duo block down with Kittle and Juszczyk to seal the edge, and then he comes around. Imagine Sauce Gardner having to deal with that. I'm making business decisions. So
All
yeah.
right, man, let's talk some ball. What makes the tight end one in Dynasty Fantasy Football, Andrew? Tell the people.
All right, so we've been toiling over this for years, as you know. So there's at the very base of it, you need one of two things. It's pretty simple. You need, and this is just the barrier to entry, right? You need either 90 targets or 10 touchdowns. Every top five tight end in fantasy football, going back to 2003, Randy McMichael was the last one. has had either 90 plus targets or 10 plus touchdowns. So that's a 20 plus year sample size. That's the goal. And the thing is, the 90% of them have got there with the targets, and the guys that get there with the touchdowns can be really inconsistent from week to week. Like Robert Tunyon, the year he was top 5, he had 11 touchdowns, but in the championship week, he caught one pass for 17 yards and you lost, right? So it's like we were chasing those targets. So the ideal situation, the number one thing that matters most is for your guy to be a top 2 target on the team. He doesn't need to be the top target on the team, right? Because the number one tight end season of all time was Rob Gronkowski. And in that season, Wes Welker got 173 targets. So we know that it's okay to be the number 2 target. The thing is, the third target on the team falls way off. It's very rare to have 3 guys on the same team all get 100 targets. Last year, right? You take every tight end and wide receiver and running back, throw them into a bucket and take the guy that was third on the team in targets, the top wide receiver was Rashad Bateman. He was wide receiver 40, right? That's per Football Focus. Per Pro Football Focus, no team over the last 2 years has had 3 guys all get 100 targets on the same team. Pro Football Focus takes out some of the throwaways and stuff. So you might find sites like Pro Football Reference or other ones that say, oh, this guy got 102 targets. And, like I think one of the sites says the Bears had 3 guys have 100 targets, but was Rome Odunze, was he super useful in fantasy? Of course not. So you want guys to be a top 2 target on the team. The one key indicator, this helps us with breakouts, is pass blocking. Incredibly, incredibly rare for a tight end uh, to succeed while blocking on more than 15% of his pass plays. It's basically only George Kittle, um, one season he blocked on 16%. You had Julius Thomas one year where Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdown passes. And then the other one was Rob Gronkowski in a year where he scored 10 touchdowns but got hurt. So it's like very rare, right? Those are the top metrics. After that, you want guys that line up a wide receiver a lot, that can create for themselves versus man to man. You want guys that have a knack for actually scoring, which red zone prowess is tough to measure, but we do know that certain guys like Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson have that connection. And we do know that some guys just aren't good in that area. I mean, Dallas Goedert very rarely gets end zone targets. He doesn't do well versus man to man. So we do have some data that helps us with that. You want high A dot guys, you want speed, right? Uh, I've been, of the guys that have multiple 40 plus yard plays, almost all of them have run faster than a 4.8 40. I think Kyle Rudolph is the only tight end to have he has 2, and he runs slower than the 4.8. So anybody that runs 4.8 or slower, very rare for them to have big breakout plays. And obviously guys like George Kittle that run a 4.52, he has multiple 60, 70, 80 yard plays, right? And then the last 2 things, which aren't so as specific to the player, are we want the offense to throw a lot and we want the offense to be highly consolidated. Those are the 2 kind of things that are outside of the profile of the player. When that all comes together, you get absolutely perfect seasons. And you look at the top 5 season all time for Mark Andrews, right? ADP, he's top 2 target on the team, got peppered with targets, 150 targets, uh, didn't blocked on 1% of his pass plays. He lined up at wide receiver 85% of the time. Like, he's not particularly fast, but like if he was fast, then he might have had the best season of all time. But the
There
top,
are like some differences in deployment. You have like your more traditional George Kittle, Tucker Kraft, inline tight end, and then you have, both ends of the spectrum, your H type, F type, Brock Bowers at the top, maybe Chigakonkwa at the bottom. So can you just break down a little bit for everybody listening what the difference is between the two?
right? So the difference between the 2 obviously is it's in alignment, right? And the reason you ideally want your guys playing wide receiver more, there's kind of 3 reasons. One is that inline tight ends tend to be asked to block more on pass plays. It's just, I mean, George Kittle himself blocks on a lot of pass plays. George Kittle does what he does. He's a unicorn in that he does what he does despite running fewer routes than every other tight end. Like if you were to take George Kittle and put him on the Chiefs and have him do what Travis Kelsey does, he would put up much better statistics for fantasy football. Kittle might be just flat out the best tight end in the league. I mean, Kelsey says it himself. but he's asked to do these things, right? The other is that you don't get as clean of releases from the inline spot, right? You're getting chipped by, so just as much as you're blocking, you're blocking and trying to get chips on guys. They might ask you to chip a defensive end. They might ask the defensive end, say, "Hey, don't let George Kittle get a clean release. Smack him on the way out. Don't let him get downfield." It hurts your A dot, right? It hurts your ability to get out. And then the third thing, which is super underrated, goes back to our other topic there, which is the high consolidation and the players on the field that aren't catching passes. If I put, like let's say I'm the Chiefs, right? If I have Travis Kelce as my inline tight end, then I might have 3 wide receivers on the field in 11 personnel. And then now there's more pass catchers out there. If I take Kelce and I move him into the big slot and put Noah Gray as my inline tight end, who comes out of the game? It's not the running back, right? It's one of the wide receivers. Now all of a sudden, Kelce is one of your 3 wide receivers. It's like with Mark Andrews. You put Mark Andrews at wide receiver, and you have Nick Boyle at inline tight end, and you have Patrick Ricard at fullback, and you have a running back out there. You only have room for one other wide receiver on the field. And you go back to years like 2021, 2022, only one wide receiver in those years played more than 50% of the snaps. 50%. One year, Willie Snead led the team with like 51% of snaps. That is perfect for the tight end. We want less of these weaselly wide receivers out there stealing the targets, right? We want our big dogs getting them all.
So we're gonna play some sleepers, breakouts, and busts. I really can't think of a better time. We have the 2025 draft coming up, and we want to help you guys identify, some of these breakouts, maybe a guy to stay away from, and who that sleeper is going to be. When you look back at your roster, you see that late third, that late fourth, and it's bringing you home to a ship. So, Andrew, why don't, since you're the guest here, why don't we jump right in with you? Who do you have here for your 2025 rookie sleeper?
Okay. So yeah, with this game here, and this is what's so tough with rookies and with touting prospects before the draft is that there's a lot of times where I come out and I say, "Hey, I like this player." And then the draft happens and I have to turn around and say, "Hey, we don't like him as much now." Right now, I profile a lot of guys. I'm kind of grouping them together. One guy, I love his profile if he lands in the right spot and hopefully gets the draft capital, is Oronde Gadsden. Oronde Gadsden, too, people our age are probably familiar with his father. Played for. I'm a Patriots fan, so I remember him as the cornerback for the Dolphins. Oronde Gadsden, his father. This kid, he profiles as a big slot type player, which to some degree Colston Loveland does as well, right? Like guys like Evan Engram who don't block, but if you get them in the right role, they can play slot. And the funny thing about that is that all of a sudden, when you have this guy playing slot wide receiver, now he is a good blocker, right? Like when I compare Evan Engram to George Kittle, he's a terrible blocker. When I can compare him to Cole Beasley or Tyler Boyd, he's awesome blocker. And that's Oronde Gadsden. Is that this guy? He's I'm surprised he even weighs as much as he does because when you look at him, he looks like a big split end, right? He looks more like Mike Evans. He looks more like Andre Johnson. He's not as fast as those guys, but
He's
that's
a bit
that's
wiry.
he's wiry. Yeah, yeah. You don't want him. Yeah, you don't want him putting his hand in the dirt, right? Like because the Giants tried that for years. Jason Garrett making Engram, and people ask why is Engram getting hurt? Well, he's 6'3". Guys like Rob Gronkowski are 6'6", 260. And these defensive ends are also 6'6", 260. And Engram is 6'3", 235. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Evan Engram is built more like Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, or Andre Johnson. So, like, that's this guy, Gadsden. If he lands in the right spot, then we love him. But if he lands at a team where he's going to rotate, then he could just end up being the next Kylan Granson or Anthony Ferkser. But I just think he's got the pedigree. He's got incredible hands. I mean, just go watch the highlights. I mean, you don't have to grind the film tape or whatever. You can just watch the highlights. This dude makes snags, contested catches. So he's one like in a deep class. He's a name that people aren't mentioning. But if some team says, "Hey, we're just going to play this guy at wide receiver," now you have a wide receiver you can start a tight end. So I like.
Real quick on Oronde Gadsden, I actually had him on my list, took him off.
Okay.
He was a wide receiver, and just a lazy comp for me is something like a Mike Gesicki when he's actually getting
Mhm.
targeted. You
Right.
know, very similar to Evan Engram, he was used the wrong way, and then he finally landed in a system where he's a big slot, and he was awesome last year. Came out
Yeah.
of the bottom of your bench and scored a ton of points.
He's the
So
perfect example for pass blocking, why it matters so much because his rookie year when he came out, Adam Gase had him blocking on 18% of pass plays, and he did absolutely nothing. And then Brian Flores came in and eventually Chan Gailey, and Chan Gailey has used big slot, he used Tony Gonzalez in big slot, he used Eric Decker in big slot. When they moved him to big slot and he blocked on 2.4% of pass plays, all of a sudden he's wide receiver 6 in fantasy. So that's why it's so important to like, especially for a guy like Gadsden, he's got to land in that spot, right? Like if another team takes him that rotates tight ends or just has inline tight ends at the top of the depth chart, he's not going to do anything. But if he lands in the right spot, maybe even backing up at like, what if he goes to the Broncos behind Evan Engram and learns to play that Joker role for Sean Payton? Now we got a guy where it's sit and wait, and if anything happens to Engram, he could right away be a dude. So that's what I'm looking for. Landing spot for that guy.
So for my 2025 rookie sleeper, I have Oregon tight end Terrance Ferguson. And so he was the first prospect that I did a film breakdown on. Um, I think probably in January, and I saw a couple things on his film that had me question him. I really wanted to wait till the combine and see his metrics. He, for his size, I mean, he's 6'5", 247 listed. I know he's a little bit bigger than that now, but he came in at a 4'6". He's number 2 in athleticism score on Player Profiler for this class. But on film, I saw like unwillingness to block downfield when he wasn't the primary in the receiving game. I saw him not playing through the whistle in the run game sometimes. But then when he was locked in, like when he knew he was getting the ball, he turned into like, I hate to say it, but like almost like a Rob Gronkowski. He was out there stiff arming guys, putting guys in the dirt. And so I really hope he can land with a coach that can keep him locked in. Prime example of college, like the college numbers, the stats don't line up with how the game will translate to the NFL. You know, that's why I have him for my sleeper. And then, like, he ran the 4.6, so now the draft
Right.
capital is probably coming too. Um, so I'm
Draft.
try- Go ahead.
I'll say I think Terrence Ferguson is the exact kind of guy that you want to take stabs on because he's a mystery box to some degree. And it's why draft capital ends up being really important. People want to ignore it, but like all the guys who have the best that we respect, right? That the analytical guys that use models, every one of them, like on my list of the guys that I really respect and love their models, they have draft capital not only in there, but as the number one metric. You look at um, Dwayne McFarland, right? You look at Ryan Heath. You look at JJ Zacharyson, in his model this year, he removed rushing yards. I'm not kidding, because it is captured by draft capital. So draft capital for certain guys matters a lot. Terrence Ferguson, the real reason it matters a ton is that scheme didn't allow they just didn't put him in position to do a lot of man to man and contested catches and work on his own. It was kind of like Luke Schoonmaker with Michigan. It was action, tons of kind of almost manufactured touches, and you saw it, right? It's like he's getting open on the play action, and then he's making guys miss, and he's stiff arming guys. But very rarely did they put him in situations where it's like him one on one with somebody. So the scouts that are going to that actually have their hands on this guy and are talking to this guy about the X's and O's, they'll get a read on whether he can handle that kind of stuff. And if they believe he does, this guy could go in the second or third round. I like Ferguson. I think he's exciting, but if he falls later in the draft, that's the kind of guy that we could also abandon. It's just the way it goes.
Who do you have for your 2025 rookie breakout?
Yeah, and again, it's very hard for um, for rookies to produce just because. And again, I have an article on this. I actually tweeted it out this morning because it came up in a conversation. But it's so hard for rookie tight ends to produce, not just because they need to learn the schemes, but because they have to be drafted into a situation where they could be a top two target on the team. And it's just so rare for a team to not have wide receivers and to draft a tight end and say immediately, this is going to be the guy, right? So you look at Brock Bowers, like they drafted him and traded Devontae Adams and said, "You're the guy." You look at Sam Laporta, they drafted him, made him a top 2 target on the team. It's just so rare for that to happen that for me, Tyler Warren feels like the most polished guy that could be that right away. But there's so think about it, how many teams out there because the Chargers would have been a good spot. Still might be, but they brought in Conklin. The Broncos now have Evan Engram and Cortland Sutton. If you draft Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, are they going to be a top 2 target on the team ahead of those guys? No. The Jets is a spot where it's possible, right? If the Jets draft Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, then they could be the number 2 target after Garrett Wilson, right? The Patriots, right? I mean, after Stephon Diggs, like that's what I'm looking for. I think Tyler Warren right now is just he's the most polished, and he's a little bit older than Colston Loveland. Uh, might not be pigeonholed into being a part-time slot guy to start off like Loveland might. So I think if you're looking for somebody to actually break out uh, and to start for your fantasy team, I think it's obviously Warren or Loveland for me. But there are other guys that in the right role could could pop too. But those he's it's kind of a cop out to say it, but if you're looking for somebody to actually draft in best ball or to start for your team, it's got to be Warren or whoever goes to the best landing spot.
There's a couple things about Warren's game that I hear brought up, and I really started diving into it. So I've heard you talk about it a bunch of times. Like tight end is one of, if not the hardest position to learn because you have to be a receiver, you have to be a lineman, you have to be a running back, you have to basically be a quarterback because you have to be everywhere on the field and know every position. The only other player on the field is the quarterback generally that has that level of knowledge. Tyler Warren was a quarterback in high school.
Mhm.
So he has field vision. And I know we see the gimmicky stuff and it might not translate, but between that and the age, when you're looking at tight end as a position that requires development, I see him as being ahead of the game. I don't see his age as being a problem.
Right.
I see us not wasting half a season in fantasy football while he learns that stuff. Um,
Exactly. And we've seen the gadgety stuff translates. I mean, like you look at Brock Bowers. How many Brock Bowers had 5 rushing touchdowns? He had a 75-yard rushing touchdown. Like he was doing the gimmicky stuff going all the way back to high school. That just speaks to their ability. And when I like, if you want to evaluate film, like you're never going to the hardest thing about evaluating film is that we don't know what scouts believe they can fix. Like a wide receiver that we're watching, we might say, "Oh, I don't like his footwork." The Steelers might look at it and say, "Hey, you know what? We've been able to fix footwork for these guys. This is the exact kind of guy that we bring in." And like Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, all these guys, like you don't know what they're looking for. One thing that you can always look for, that's always a positive, are guys making difference making plays. Guys not going down when they're being tackled. Guys when there's 5 guys around them finding creases and getting extra yards. Guys willing to hurdle. Guys willing to dive for the pylon. Guys willing to do crazy stuff. Go watch again. I'll bring up Luke Schoonmaker. Go watch Luke Schoonmaker. He's just kind of doing, it's play action. He catches it. They tackle him. He gets up, dusts himself off, and then go watch George Kittle's college highlights. George Kittle fell to the 5th round, and he only got drafted because C.J. Beathard was drafted earlier by the 49ers, and that was his teammate in college. But when you watch the college tape, he doesn't ever want to go down. He doesn't. He's just doing everything in his power. He's doing crazy stuff. Sam Laporta had a play against I. It's not. He was on a play in the bowl game where he broke 6 tackles on one play. Like that. That's one thing that you can all like. Is this guy the star of the team? Is he making things pop? Dude, Tyler Warren is that. Like he's doing that, and that's why he's so exciting to me. Is that like he has that main character in him, whereas some of these other guys not so much.
I don't want to let him go past like the 105 or 106.
Right.
It's
The
he's
way the way the wide receivers are kind of people are souring on him a little bit. Who knows?
yeah. It's game breaking skill set for fantasy football. In the vein of almost what Travis Hunter could do.
Right.
I mean,
He's just doing, yeah, you're right. The converted quarterback, like he threw touchdown passes, he ran wildcat, he ran screen, he did everything. There's nothing he didn't do. And as a converted quarterback, he probably hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. Like guy like Logan Thomas was converted to quarterback, and he had a top 3 season in fantasy, but it took him a little while to get there. Didn't take Tyler Warren that long.
Absolutely. And my 2025 rookie breakout, you got to hear me out here because I'm going to hit narrative street for a second.
I love it.
We have Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green tight end. He's coming in here on Player Profiler, 6'3", 241, 32-inch arms. He's going to be 21 basically when the season hits. 4.71 40-yard dash, so he's under the 4.8 like you were talking about. Um, a little bit lacking in a couple other metrics, but his agility scores in the 75th percentile. Now, for me, for Harold Fannin, landing spot is going to be the most important thing.
Huge.
I mean, draft capital obviously dictates, but if you look back on his career here, 2022, 10 games. Oh, no, excuse. That was a bad year. Okay, 23, 11 games, 44 receptions, 600 yards, 17% target share. He's 19 years old, 6 receiving touchdowns. 20 years old, he comes in 13 games, 117 receptions, 1,555 yards, 37% target share, 10 receiving touchdowns. He's 20 years old. And we're
Right.
talking about developing and skill sets here. And when I look at Harold Fannin, I can't unsee this now. He's built like Zeke Elliott from the waist up, and then he has David Njoku's legs from the hips down.
Yeah.
And his anatomy makes it tough for him to be able to block. He can't get down low to the ground, but when he gets moving, he's like a running back. Like he smashes guys. He's moving in traffic. He can navigate the hole like a running back. And my dream scenario, because when I see him, I see Antonio Gates all day. And I want him to land with the Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer's running basically the same offense that his dad Marty's was running. And, I had asked you earlier what made you fall in love with football. DirecTV didn't have local channels when I was a kid. You got West Coast and East Coast, all your ABC, CBS's. I grew up watching LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, Drew Brees, Philip Rivers, Keenan McCardell, all those guys.
Yeah. Vincent Jackson.
Vincent Jackson, rest in peace.
RP.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, but I just can't get it out of my head. I just see Harold Fannin and I see that wonky gait that he has, almost like a Marshawn Lynch, Antonio Gates, and maybe he doesn't have the most direct athletic movement, but you have no idea where he's going because he has a ball bearing for hips. You might think he's going right and he's already around the horn running for 40. So it's just raw ability with him. Um, I
Yeah.
feel
He
like if, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Hit
he
it.
reminds me a lot of Jatavian Sanders in a good way. I like Jatavian Sanders. Like they both of them didn't run as fast as you would hope, but it's good enough. And they both have incredible hands, and they're when they get the ball in their hands, they're looking to make plays. Definitely the opposite of a catch and fall down. I mean, the guy had 1,500. He had the most receiving yards a tight end's ever had in college. I know it was at Bowling Green, which again, we've seen guys like I mean, we've seen guys like Kyle and Granson pop off at smaller schools and stuff. But like I think that this guy, like you said, in the right landing spot, you want him to go to a team like you said with the Cowboys. You look at Jake Ferguson, and I think just this guy's just immediately a better pass catcher. You want him to for as far as landing spots for a guy like this, you want him to go to one of 3 types of spots. A spot where he immediately can play slot. That would obviously be number one, right? You want him to go to a spot where he's in the room, the best pass catcher. Like if he goes to a team like the Chargers, he's just a better pass catcher than Tyler Conklin and Will Disley right away. And Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator when Mark Andrews had that season where he played 85% of his snaps from the slot, right? So you've got a guy that's willing to do that. You know what I mean? Or the last spot you'd want to go to is the one I described earlier with Evan Engram, where it's like he's the heir apparent to a guy that has a good role. And that goes for the Broncos. That goes for the Chiefs. I mean, if the Chiefs want to use Noah Gray or someone like him as the inline tight end, and they just want the best pass catching tight end to line up in the slot, Harold Fannin, I mean, could learn from Travis Kelsey for a year and then be that next guy. So absolutely possible. Landing spot is crucial, but the thing with Harold Fannin, like I've gotten beyond the point of saying, "Oh, like that's a knock for him," because that's the reality for a lot of these guys. And it goes for the first round tight ends too, because you're stuck with that team for 5 years if they like it. Kyle Pitts, they picked up the fifth year option on Kyle Pitts when he wasn't even playing that good, and he's now stuck 1 year, 10 million, can't go anywhere. Evan Engram got stuck with the Giants as a first round pick for 5 years before he got to leave and pick Doug Peterson. And guys like Doug Peterson and Chan Gailey aren't walking through that door. So landing spot matters for all these guys. So for me, Harold Fannin, if he gets the right spot, just like everybody else, will be in. And if he falls and doesn't look good, then that all that means to us is that scouts don't respect, the conference that Bowling Green plays in, because that's the only argument against the guy.
Not to throw a bunch of shade, but if you look at the schedule Harold Fannin played this year and look at a typical ACC schedule, is it really that much different?
No, they
And
played good teams, and he was good. Like he was. If anyone that wants to watch tight end greatness, just watch the game versus Penn State, because you can watch Tyler Warren and Harold Fannin. They both look good, right? That's
uh,
the if you're gonna watch one game for your tight end research, that's the game.
oh, I didn't tell you that's what I watch every night when I fall asleep.
You just throw it on. That's like my dad, except he does that with he watches. I swear he's watched the Patriots beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl 50 times.
So he was celebrating the holiday the other day then, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. He just my mom would text me and be like, he's watching it again. That's
Well, when your team has six or more rings, I mean, you could get away with whatever, you know? I mean,
right. But you mix it up every once in a while. It's like I mean, like watch the first Rams one. It's like it's that one.
I love
That's
it.
his go to. That and forgetting Sarah Marshall. I don't think anybody on the planet has seen those two things more times than my father.
Tombstone for me. That's mine.
Oh hell yeah, dude.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I'm welcome. I went on a real Western kick, dude. And anyone that hasn't done it, I envy you. Start at the beginning and go through all of them. Good, bad, and the ugly. Hit them all, dude, because it's a fun kick.
I've been looking for something, so I think I'll have to start with Gunsmoke maybe and go from there.
Yeah,
We're going to jump in here. We're going to talk about our 2025 rookie busts, but hear me out. We don't hate players, we hate ADPs.
of course.
There's no draft capital yet. We're just taking a look at here, looking at narratives, looking at stats. But real quick here, why don't you give me your 2025 rookie bust at tight end, Andrew?
It's everyone. It's Terrance Ferguson. No, I'm just kidding with you. You just talked about how much you love him. No, the thing is, there's guys that have profiles that I don't love, right? So I'll give you one that people really like a lot, which is Mason Taylor. Uh, what I do like about him, his dad is obviously a legend, Jason Taylor, and people might not know his uncle is Zach Thomas. So Jason Taylor married Zach Thomas' sister. So this guy you're not going to get a better pedigree than this guy, right? He's got prototypical size, 6'5", 251. Here's the problem that I run into is that at LSU, they had him playing a less than ideal role for fantasy. And the reality is, if at the college level they don't view you as a weapon that's going to beat other teams every week, then how it's very hard for me to view that at the NFL level. So when they make this guy stay in line for 50% of his plays, they made him blocking on pass plays, Dustin, 16.7%. So nearly 1/8 of the time or whatever it is, not a big math guy, they said, "Hey, we're going to throw the ball. We want you to stay here and block. And we have other guys that can catch. You're going to stay in." Like that to me, it's just historically doesn't work out well. And he's got like what the pedigree is like everything, because he doesn't have a ton of contested catches. He doesn't have much success versus man. His A dot was low. I mean, his yards per route run was like 1.23, which was not even in the top like 20 of the prospects I kind of looked at. Like it's just, and again, if a team takes him early, he can be he needs to be a two-way tight end in the NFL where they're saying, hey, you're going to play every single snap, right? Like, but those guys end up being in a lot of cases like a Cade Otton, which is fine. But like we're looking for guys that can be pass catchers. I'm looking for wide receivers that I can start at tight end. I'm looking for Marquise Colston. I'm looking for Brock Bowers. So like guys that are asked to block a ton at the previous level are typically asked to block exclusively at the next level. Like Drew Sample, Tip Ryman, these guys like that are if you're drafted because of your blocking, it worries me. It worries me. If you're drafted because you're blocking but you're also, only blocking on 2% of your pass plays and you're line up at wide receiver a bunch and you're also then that's great. We want guys that are good at pass catching and good at blocking. We don't want guys that are good at blocking and okay at pass catching. So Mason Taylor scares me. If he goes in the second round though, now all of a sudden we're like, okay, you know what does this team see in this guy? But you got to remember, Drew Sample win the second round because he's a really good blocker.
I guess the only thing I would point to was I do believe LSU had a couple decent wide receivers the
Yeah, of
last
course.
couple of years.
Right. Same with Ohio State, right? Teammate, hey, you know what? That's the one thing that's really good. His teammate score, of course, is very high,
Yeah,
right?
teammates.
Teammate score is high. But I mean, it's like, why do guys keep going there? Like, if you're a good tight end, go to Iowa or Iowa State, or you know what I mean? Like, why are you going to LSU to be the next Irv Smith? LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, don't go there. Go to a team that's going to make you the focal point.
Hey,
I don't know.
but not to jump in, but you never gave us your bust for the rookies.
Oh, that's right. My 2025 rookie tight end bust is Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo. Um, and he is talented beyond all get out. I mean, the Senior Bowl was great. There's just a couple things I worry about. The depth of this tight end class, like if you look at drafts right now, he's basically going as the locked in tight end three in Dynasty rookie drafts from the mocks I've been taking a look at, looking at shout out Dynasty Daddy for the ADP. I was looking on there as well. And I'm just worried that with the knee injury he suffered at the Senior Bowl, that he might come into the NFL and just have a hard time getting going. And then we're not even talking about landing spot. We're not even talking about draft capital yet. Rule of thumb for me, I try not to draft players that are already injured before they play a whole season of NFL football, just because they're probably going to be injured, even if we think they're healthy and listed as healthy, they're injured. So,
Right.
what
It's
do you think?
tough. I mean, and you've seen guys like, I hate to say it, like Eric All struggled with injuries so far again, getting hurt. Jonathan Brooks, obviously. And again, it's like with a guy like Elijah Arroyo, and you got to be careful saying that. Theo Greminger is big on Elijah Arroyo. It's just we don't have a 40 time because he's hurt. He got hurt at the Senior Bowl, didn't do it at the combine, didn't do it at his pro day, which means he's still, like you said, not healthy. And we don't have a big sample size. And I always like, to be honest, when a guy shows out at the Senior Bowl, I I do worry those guys get steamed up on the rookie rankings, like the consensus rankings, because like you go and look at last year's Senior Bowl, and outside of Lad McConkey, it was essentially the who's who is who is getting steamed up. Um, that didn't really do a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like the Dylan lobby and again the we haven't seen Marshawn Lloyd and a lot of these guys yet, but like I just worry about it a little bit, you know what I mean? And again, it's like Elijah Royal. When I ask Theo and a lot of these people, I go, "What do you like about the guy?" They say he looked good at the Senior Bowl. Well, there's a lot of early declare guys like Colston Loveland and these guys that weren't at the Senior Bowl because they didn't have to go back to school for their last season. So just be I not to say that Theo would move him up for that particular reason because I know Theo is more in depth than that. He's like, we would never just do it just for that. But I have asked people, I'm like, what did you like about the guy? And if the only thing I hear is that he looked good at the Senior Bowl, I need more than that. I need more than that. And again, good prospect that hardly played in college because he was hurt all the time, and never really put it together for a season. So I don't know. But again, if teams love him, then we'll give him a shot.
I absolutely love him. He's kind of depending on capital and health actually into the season. He's a prime candidate for me to let somebody else draft
Yeah.
and then try to trade and acquire for him maybe a few weeks into the season, you know.
Yeah, it's smart to do it that way with guys like that because they might not like if you see it and it looks good at the NFL level, then you've seen what you need, but you're not exposed to the risk, and they're not probably so attached to him that they won't trade him to you. So I kind of like that idea for a player like this. Like, let somebody take on the initial risk and then overpay a little bit if you have to, if you like it, because it's a guy you liked, you know?
We are going to jump in here and rapid fire some veteran tight end buy, sell, holds. Just a quick note, real quick. I know we've hit a lot of heady stuff here. Um, Easiest thing that got me started with tight ends, go on Sleeper, look at the snap share percentage. Snap share percentage is one of the truest, easiest, purest indicators. Tight ends on the field, go through Andrew's list. First thing you look for is snap percentage. The rest of the stuff you can see with your eyes. So, all right, Andrew, let's get into these veterans real quick. We're going to do some buy, sell, hold. Who do you got here for your veteran buys?
Yeah. So if you're competing, I will just because since we're going rapid fire, if you're playing for the future, I don't mind taking stabs on like athletic guys that have a path to being a top two target on the team. So like guys like Jatavian Sanders, we don't know with Carolina. A guy like Brenton Strange, who's the number two target after Brian Thomas Jr. A guy like Chiga Conquo, right? It's Calvin Ridley, and then who is the wide receiver two? Traylon Burks. I mean, I don't even know over there. Again, the draft could really hurt these guys, so maybe wait till after the draft. But after the draft, if those teams don't draft wide receivers, I go for those. If I'm playing to win now, though, Evan Engram's the guy because casual gamers see that he got released and the value goes down, but they don't realize that that scheme needs an inline two-way tight end. That's what Liam Cohen's been doing that's what he did with the Buccaneers. That's what they did with the Rams, right? And the focal point of the offense is a guy that plays slot, and it's a wide receiver that plays slot and then flanker for two wide receiver sets. It's Cooper Kupp, it's Chris Godwin, it's Brian Thomas Jr. They don't need pure slot guys. That's why Christian Kirk got traded. They don't need a big slot tight end. That's why Evan Engram's gone. They need somebody that can just be a two-way inline blocker like Tyler Higbee or Kate Otten and do a little bit in the pass game. That's Brenton Strange. Evan Engram, he fell out of the tree, bounced off the trampoline, and landed in a higher branch because he went and now he's going to be the big slot joker player for Sean Payton. He tried Greg Dulcich there. He tried Lucas Kroll there. He tried Devon Vele there. He tried little Jordan Humphrey. They just say, hey, you know what? Let's just go get the best one available. It's Evan Engram. He's going to play the Jimmy Graham-esque role where he's just a big wide receiver. And Cortland Sutton is the only other target there. They might draft a running back and throw to the running back a ton, but like Evan Ingram's locked in for me. I'm buying him. And if you go and look at like Alex Korf's trade calculator, I know you guys have like dynasty value calculators. People aren't valuing him as high as they should. They have him down with like guys like Jake Ferguson and like Dalton Schultz. It's crazy to me. Evan Engram, buy him right now if you're trying to win right now. What about you, man?
Oh, I
I
agree
know you
with
love
you.
Engram too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been buying him. So it's funny because for me, I use market dynamics. So I saw him being chopped from last year with the cap savings, the situation, Brenton Strange coming on. Soon as he landed in Denver, he was on my immediate buy list.
Easy.
Over the last, I'd say, week, he's went from maybe like a high third round pick to maybe like a low second, depending. But I've been trying to combo him into bigger deals, try to kind of cover up the value elsewhere. But I think I bought probably 3 out of 10 of my teams. I bought Evan Ingram on already.
I love it. Nobody ever sells me a tight end. If I want it, no one will sell. No one will trade me Evan Engram. They follow me on Twitter. It's they won't trade me a tight end. They won't buy a tight end that I'm selling, even if it's like a great tight end. They are like you're up to something. So I just I always say I'm trying to buy them, but no one ever gets it. You just don't.
Oh, I love it.
You know that guy. It's just like you're out. It's like when you'll see, dude. You got this show and stuff now. Like your guys in your leagues, they're not going to be traded. You're done. Your trading days are done.
It's over. All right, I'm gonna jump in real quick and keeping with the theme of the show, we're gonna shout out Theo Graminger here. If there's one thing that I hear in my head in Theo's voice, it's "Bye, David Njoku," over and over and over. And if you look at the entirety of this conversation, what is it with tight ends? Tight ends are continuously and every time not given the time they need to develop. Their skill sets aren't always being used properly, etc., etc. It's the dead cat bounce. You know, you buy the David Njokus. Right now, it's Kyle Pitts. Go out there, buy Kyle Pitts or hold Kyle Pitts, sell Kyle Pitts. Like whatever's going on with Kyle Pitts, he's in that phase. But back to David Njoku, I mean, he in the last 3 seasons, or 2023, 2024, tight end 6, tight end 11. Um, they haven't had a quarterback yet. And I put out an article writing about how the 2025 veteran wide receivers that have been on the move are essentially the Cortland Sutton and the Terry McLaurin this year. They have new quarterbacks coming in. The price is low, but David Njoku makes that list for me. He hits all of the things on your list. He's basically their big slot wide receiver. And the man is tough as nails. I mean, he played a game 3 days after he burned his face off. Came in with a mask on.
Yeah, incredible.
Just amazing. But I mean, we're so quick to forget. Travis Kelce was older when he really came into his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Njoku here, he's about to be 29, but he's still 2017 class, number 4 in athleticism, score number 12. In the class at all positions, number 28 of all time ranked in athleticism score out of 523 tight ends. And he cost a little bit less or about as much as Evan Engram does.
Right. Just look at the guy. He's a freak, right? Like you don't have to look at athletic score. Google David. He warms up every game, no matter what the weather is, with no shirt on. So like this, you had plenty of opportunities to see how yoked this guy is. And I'll say that, to your point on Travis Kelce, he didn't have a 1,000-yard season until he was 27. The age apex for tight ends, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Like you can still have big games. That's why we like these guys. And that team can't afford wide receivers. I mean, they've already gone by. They're not going to use the draft capital, so it's going to be Judy and Cedric Tillman and Njoku. Right? It'd be crazy for them to invest more into wide receiver. Maybe they'll bring Elijah Moore back. Who knows? But Elijah Moore is one of the least efficient wide receivers that's gotten dealt 100+ targets back to back years. So I'm with you on Njoku. He's awesome.
All right, who we selling, Coop?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough sell, but people really liked this guy for a long time. And I told people to sell him. I'm still telling people to sell him. Jake Ferguson, right? And people will say, oh, Coop, well, he's a top 2 target on the team. I don't think that's going to last very long. I don't think you want this guy to be a top 2 target on the team. If he's a top 2 target on your team, you're not winning the Super Bowl, right? CeeDee Lamb gets 150 targets a year. So if you bring in one other wide receiver, any wide receiver, if they draft any wide receiver in the first 3 rounds, you've got one guy getting 150 targets and then another wide receiver and then Jake Ferguson, who go to playerprofiler.com. It's the best place to pull up and see the 40 times for these guys and all and the age and all that. Like, it's just so nice and clean with the graphics. I'm sure you'll throw the graphic up on the screen for me in post, right? Throw it right over your face over there so everyone can see the picture of Turd Ferguson up
Ah!
on, right? Because I swear that's from me and Matt Kelly talking. And I was
Oh,
like, this guy runs like a 4.82. I said earlier on the show, very rarely do those guys ever have 40+ yard plays. He has one 40-yard play. It's exactly 40 yards. Like he doesn't win versus in man to man. He doesn't create for himself. Like he's just one of those guys that like had a hurdle early in his career. So people are like, oh, this guy's super athletic when he's really not. He doesn't break off big plays. And I think that much like Dalton Schultz before him, when the opportunity is there, you can have these big seasons, right? The Browns fell for it themselves signing Austin Hooper after the Falcons threw 50 more passes than any other team that year. And then they signed Austin Hooper and it hurt the development of David Njoku. But like a guy like Austin Hooper can have a big year. A guy like Dalton Schultz can have a big year. A guy like Jake Ferguson can have a big year when they're force fed targets by a team whose back is against the wall. I think the Cowboys draft a wide receiver this year. I think you should sell Jake Ferguson. You have what, 4 days to do so.
Yeah, definitely fire sale on Jake Ferguson. I wouldn't be surprised, like I was talking about with Harold Fannin, if they don't grab a few skill position players, especially Jerry Jones doesn't love to spend money.
No.
We saw that with their free agency. He relies on the college prospect evaluation. I like to crack a joke like he's the ultimate dynasty fantasy football
It's
manager.
true. Jerry Jones is, you're right. He's the Dino master. And he's always willing to go on the radio and tell us what he's thinking too. I like Jerry for that.
He might have saved himself from Jonathan Brooks though last season just by blabbing
True.
about it. So we never know.
Right.
All right. So who are we holding here?
Yeah. You alluded to earlier, but I'm holding on to Kyle Pitts. I think that this guy, people hate him, and that's great. Makes it easier to acquire him. He had a 1,000-yard season as a rookie with Matt Ryan, right? There's a lot of parallels to another player we like, Evan Engram. Evan Engram came out and had a top 5 tight end season as a rookie with Eli Manning. And then Eli Manning, that was the shell of Eli Manning. Then Eli Manning went away, and he wasn't good with Daniel Jones in a scheme that didn't work for him. And then when he finally was out of that contract and he got to go wherever he wanted, he went to go play in Doug Peterson's system with Trevor Lawrence. And they used him the way that he should be used. And then he had the second most receptions of tight ends ever had in a season, right? And Kyle Pitts had this season with Matt Ryan where he had 1,000 yards, right? If he doesn't have another 1,000-yard season in his career, he goes on to a crazy small list of only like 5 guys. Like one of them is Kelvin Benjamin, which is scary. Only 2 of them played in the last like 20 years. Like you got to go all the way back to like Mike Ditka and a couple of these other guys to find guys that never had another 1,000-yard season, right? He played with terrible quarterbacks, had the knee issues, and then now the new scheme with Zach Robinson is the same scheme I talked about with Liam Cohen, with it that the Buccaneers and the Rams use. He came over from the Rams. They want to use 3 wide receivers. They want to use an inline tight end. Charlie Warner is a better blocker, so that led Charlie Warner to play a bunch of snaps. I think Kyle Pitts, again, you have to hold him through this year if he doesn't get traded. I think he's a trade candidate because he can get moved. 0 dead cap for the Falcons. Whatever team takes on a 1-year, $10 million guaranteed contract. But if you can trade like a late round pick to give that guy a shot, maybe my Patriots would do it. Then you can use him the way he should be used, which is just as a wide receiver that you can start a tight end in fantasy. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be, unless the knee injuries he's had are just permanently going to, he's never going to be the same again. It's possible, but I've seen this guy be good. I saw him have 3 40-plus yard plays last season. I think that there's still hope for Kyle Pitts. He's only 24 years old, so I'm holding.
Yeah, the price on Pitts right now, you can't really beat it.
There's no reason to sell. What are you going to do with that pick? You're going to trade him for a second or third round pick and do what with it? Hit rates are terrible on those picks, and a lot of those guys are 24 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so
This
I'm
is
hanging.
why you got to ride the tight end dip, and
Ride it.
and just hope you're on the top of the wave there.
Right.
And
One thing I always say, dude, uh, when you see the Corvettes and the Lamborghinis with the custom license plates, there's a reason those license plates never say sell low. Okay. It's
I,
buy low or sell high. There's the sell low. There's no sell low license plates. We're trying to make it big. This guy has unique upside.
upside wins
That's it.
dynasty fantasy football championships. All
Bingo.
right, my last one here. I am holding Green Bay Packers tight end Tucker Kraft. And he is probably my single most favorite tight end. One of the reasons why I wanted to drag you on here and we could talk for an hour about tight ends. He, for me, it's a lofty comp, but looking at the situation in Green Bay, it's very similar to me with how George Kittle ended up kind of coming onto the scene. Originally, he wasn't surrounded by a alpha wide receiver one. There was already chatter last season by the coaching staff that they need to take the time to develop a plan around him. And one thing that I don't think is being mentioned, shout out Chev90 if you want to check out our first pod episode. We talk about wide zone, which is also a part of this whole 12 formation thing. But Kraft himself is a big bodied, prototypical Y George Kittle-esque tight end, but he has that Brock Bowers type skill set. You can move him around. They were jet sweeping for him. They were throwing screens for him, and he is the nastiest guy on the field when he gets the ball in his hand. Like Najee Harris level stiff arms, like sending guys to the shadow realm.
Yeah.
And for me, I bought last year at a cost of almost nothing, and pending rookies, he's my dynasty tight end 5 going into the 2025 season. If he gets that last element, which is the number 2, maybe even number 1 target in the offense, it's over.
Yeah. And you look at that team, I mean, here's the truth. Jaden Reed has never played more than 75% of the snaps in the game, right? He's a part-time player. So even if that guy gets 100 targets, like right now in his role, he's not going to have like 140, 150. Just not, he needs to become a full-time player for that to happen. Maybe it will, but he can still be the second target on the team. You've got Romeo Dubs and Dontavian Wicks. Those guys have combined for 5 seasons. They've never had a regular season game with over 100 yards. Romeo Dubs has one in the playoffs, but they've never had neither one of them has. Like, it's just crazy. And then Christian Watson's dad came out and said that he might not play football at all this year. I don't know what Christian Watson's dad always feels the need to comment on things, but I appreciate him because he's, a lot of times he's telling the truth, or he's at least out there giving us info. So he says that he doesn't expect his son to play at all. If he does, it'll be very limited. So, barring this team drafting a high-end wide receiver, of which there are very few in this draft, it's entirely possible that Tucker Kraft could be a top 2 target on the team, or top or 1, and we like the guy. So worked out great. I mean, he beat out. The thing is, um, just like Mark Andrews, who was drafted in the same draft behind Hayden Hurst, he beat out Luke Musgrave. I thought Luke Musgrave. You got to side with the guy drafted earlier with the pass catching profile first. But at this stage, there's no argument. It's over. Like, he beat him out. Luke Musgrave should be asking for a trade. I don't know why his agent isn't kicking the tires on that. But yeah, Kraft has that upside. And the thing is, you can, even if he doesn't break out this year, you continue to hold, because they're going to have to pay those guys. Like, you can't just, they're not going to pay all of Dubs and Wicks and Watson and Reed and Musgrave and Kraft. Pieces will fall away. And then eventually they'll make him the guy, or another team will make him the guy.
Like,
Yeah. This is how much they love him. Last year, right? People were saying, oh, he's got to compete versus Luke Musgrave to start. He tore his pec and missed the entire offseason. And the moment he was ready to go, which was August, like late August, he just went right back in and was a guy. So the fact that they already had decided, that tells us they decided before the offseason this guy was the guy, because he did nothing. He did nothing in the offseason. And he was ready to go, and he was awesome. So
here, one last question for you. I'd love for you to tell the people where your work is, what your work is, and what are you most passionate about in the fantasy football space?
for sure. So I'm at Fantasy Alarm. So you can, I post a lot of stuff for free on my Twitter at Coupe Fiasco. I also post a lot of articles for free. I have a ton of stuff behind the paywall for Fantasy Alarm members. I'm also in our Discord all the time. Like, we do drafts and stuff, and we have the Sirius XM show. I'm on 6 to 8 p.m. every Thursday and Friday, also every Sunday morning during the season. But the main thing I'm passionate about, and why I think people should consider becoming a Fantasy Alarm member, is that my favorite thing is to teach people to be better at this game. So rather than just telling you who to pick is the most basic level of this. And we do that. We have the rankings, like whatever, just like everybody else. But we're trying to make you better fantasy gamers. And my favorite thing ever is when somebody comes to me and they say, like you said earlier in the show, hey, I read your stuff and I've identified this player based on your metrics. And it might not even be a player that I'm on myself, but they say, hey, you know what? I think he could be a top 2 target on the team. I think that he has the speed, he has the athleticism, and I think that this guy is going to be a guy because of what you said. That's my favorite thing, is when people take that and they absorb it and they actually understand it and they become better at this game. That's the end goal for me. So that's what I'm passionate about. We're trying to do that all the time. And why I post, half my articles are just like, hey, these are guys I like. Half my articles are, here's how you become better. Like the article that won fantasy. So I won the fantasy sports writer of the year, but we also won the fantasy article of the year. Check out Google Fantasy Alarm 3 books for the Dynasty Trader. That article is just about making you better. It's not, there's no player names, hardly any player names even mentioned in it. So that's what I like best for me personally, man. And that's why I love doing shows like this where you come on and ask those type of questions. You don't just say, "Hey, who are your top 5 tight ends?" We talk about why. You know what I mean? And then people are better on the other side. So thanks for having me on, Dustin, and letting me share some of the info we got.
Oh man, the pleasure was all mine. And if you want, we could just start over and we'll do a 4 round rookie mock draft.